Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, was a man defined by power, limitless, unimaginable power. To most, he was invincible, untouchable, and almost godlike. He moved through life with a carefree demeanor, always smiling, always in control, but beneath that smile lay a deeper truth. Strength, especially in excess, is a heavy burden. For Gojo, it wasn't just a weapon or a tool, it was a form of isolation, a barrier that separated him from the rest of humanity. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, power is everything, and Gojo stood at the pinnacle. He wielded the limitless curse technique and possessed the six eyes ability so potent that they placed him in a league of his own. His presence in the story was so overwhelming that he could easily shift the balance of any conflict. For a while, this power defined him, both as a sorcerer and as a mentor to Yuji Itadori and his fellow students at Tokyo Jujutsu High. Gojo's mission was to revolutionize the world of Jujutsu sorcery, to protect his students and ultimately break the cycle of corruption that had long plagued the world. But even as he fought for these noble ideals, Gojo's strength often felt like a prison. Gojo's power was so immense that it warped the world around him. He could face off against multiple special great curses without breaking a sweat. He could bend space, time, and reality with his techniques, but this very strength set him apart, made him difficult to understand, and ultimately impossible to relate to. People like Superman or Saitama from One Punch Man, well, they shared similar fates. Superman, the ultimate hero, was revered but also alienated because no one could truly comprehend his godlike abilities. Saitama, the hero who defeated every opponent with a single punch, had grown bored and isolated because there was no challenge left in the world. Gojo Satoru was pretty much on the same boat, bored, isolated, and misunderstood. Why did Lex Luthor always try so hard to end Superman? Because he could not understand how somebody with so much power would not use it for negative. Gojo smiled often, but he wasn't always out of joy. Remember, Gojo almost did turn evil. Sometimes his smile masked the deep loneliness of his existence. He moved through life like a being apart from the rest of humanity. A man whose power was both his greatest asset and his greatest curse. No one around him, not his students, Yuji, Megumi, Nobara, or Yuta, Maki, could fully understand the weight of that power. They admired him, certainly, but they could never relate to the loneliness that came with being untouchable. This sense of isolation was most profoundly highlighted when Gojo finally faced a true equal, Ryomen Sukuna. The King of Curses was one of the few beings in the world who could rival Gojo's strength. When they clashed, it was one of the first times in the series where Gojo felt truly alive. The battle wasn't just about power, it was about being understood. In Sukuna, Gojo found someone who could challenge him, who knew the loneliness of overwhelming strength. For Gojo, that fight was more than just a struggle for survival. It was a rare moment of connection. In that moment, he was at his happiest, smiling not out of duty or boredom, but out of genuine exhilaration. He wasn't just Gojo, the strongest sorcerer. He was Gojo, a man facing an opponent who finally made him feel something. And yes, we know, pre-childhood, pre-strongest Gojo was understood. He had friends, he had connection, he could still be grasped. Post-awakening Gojo could not. But despite his powers, Gojo wasn't invincible in the way people believed. He was still a part of a larger story, and his overwhelming strength eventually became an obstacle for the narrative itself. Even Gege Akutame, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, had to find ways to ride around Gojo. If he remained free, if he continued to fight alongside his students, there would be no conflict that couldn't be solved. His very presence tipped the balance too far in favor of the sorcerers. This is why in one of the most pivotal moments of the story, the Shibuya arc, Gojo had to be sealed. The sealing of Gojo in the prison ram during the Shibuya incident wasn't just a tactical move by the villains. It was a necessary move by the author for the story to move forward. With Gojo out of the picture, the stakes became higher and the other characters were forced to grow in his absence. But for Gojo, being sealed was another form of isolation. Trapped in a dimension where time didn't exist, he was alone with his thoughts, cut off from the world he had sworn to protect. In the end, even Gojo's eventual death became an essential narrative turning point. He was so powerful that the story couldn't move forward without removing him. His death wasn't just the fall of a hero, it was a necessary sacrifice to allow the next generation of sorcerers to step up. to face the challenges of the world without relying on his exhilarating power, I'm gonna say. Gojo's death, in a way, symbolized the end of an era and the beginning of something new. Gojo Satoru, for all his power, was a tragic figure. He carried the weight of his abilities, knowing that few could understand him and fewer still could challenge him. His strength was both his gift and his curse, a force that isolated him from those he cared about and ultimately from the world itself. His battle with Sukuna gave him a fleeting taste of what it meant to be truly alive, but even that wasn't enough to change the curse of the story. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gojo's legacy will forever be tied to his strength, but his true tragedy was that, for all his powers, he could never escape the loneliness that came with it. He was a hero, a mentor, and the strongest sorcerer of his time, but in the end, he was also a man who, despite his invincibility, was ultimately alone. And yet, he won. He did not allow strong sorcerers or any sorcerer to be alone again. At least not on his watch. Thanks for watching.